convocation, prayer, and the Pledge of Allegiance. By doing so, we build a family-like community where all students grow and flourish and personal faith is encouraged. Through community service and a historical approach to biblical study, our students are taught the value of the warrior way, honesty, respect, and responsibility. Oak Mountain Academy. We are a family creating legacies. To learn more, visit oakmountain.us.
For more than 70 years, you have turned to Tanner Health System for your healthcare needs. As our community moves forward, Tanner is here for you. Strong, safe, and close to home. Routine medical appointments, urgent elective surgeries, and imaging are back on the calendar at our hospitals and Tanner Medical Group practice.
National headlines and the local stories you care about. WLBB, Carrollton, News Talk 1330, FM 106.3.
Thank you for tuning into our program. Again, 8:30. You can see us on the News Talk 1330 WLBB Facebook page this morning. Of course, News Talk 1330 FM 106.3, streaming live online at newstalk1330.com. Our guest this morning is the Senate Majority Leader in the state of Georgia, Michael Dugan, out of Carrollton, District 30. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Good to be back.
We're glad to have you back. The session just ended on Friday, and lucky to have you in here to kind of recap that for us, maybe explain some things and talk about some bills that may have been passed that we're not aware of. Of course, there's bills that were talked about all session. An odd session, strange session that it went so long. Did you say it was 4 months?
Yeah, it was 166 days. It's the longest session in the state's history, and obviously for the pandemic that came through that caused a pause in there. But strangely, we didn't adjourn. We recessed. So session was still going at that point.
And when you went back to the session, I don't think you took any days off, maybe one day at that time. You crammed them in there and even worked on Saturday and Sunday.
It's only the second time in the state's history we've met on a Saturday.
Mm-hmm. Why did you take the time off? Was it anxious to get it done by July 1st, I guess, because of the budget?
Well, yes, precisely because of the budget. Because every agency out there that deals with state funds, that budget starts July 1st. So you try to give them as much foreknowledge as you could to let them start prepping, because just a few days that's their money.
That's Wednesday, and it starts this coming Wednesday. We'll talk about the budget. It's the only thing you guys are legally required to do. We'll talk about that budget and the cuts that were involved. As far as the Senate races this year, is there any chance that the Republicans won't be the majority at the end of this year?
I don't think so.
Based on those races?
I don't think so.
And how about you in your position as Senate Majority Leader? Have you had conversations? I mean, what's that role to decide if Mike Dugan will come back as a Senate Majority Leader next year?
The lot of support from my members, and obviously in my position, I'm picked by the Republican members of the Senate, and all the feedback I've gotten is thanks. I appreciate your leadership and look forward to having you back in that same role next time.
Mike Dugan, our guest on this morning's Community Voice program. Time right now is 8:32. The budget, as we said, was the big thing you guys had to take care of. It was $26 billion, and there were cuts of $2.2 billion. I guess what were some of the cuts? You and I had talked a couple months ago about concerns for the cuts in the budget, and there were some mental health things that you were concerned about in particular. There were some cuts to some mental health things.
Yeah. There were cuts through every part of the budget. Now, obviously, the area that got the most cuts was education. And nobody wants to cut anything, much less education. But it's also by far the largest part of the budget. It's over 50% of the budget. It's like 54% is on education.
Yeah, it's K through 12 and university system.
And technical college system. Yeah. So, there are going to be some cuts there, but when you go into the budget process, there's other things that you take into account. What's the number of the people it's going to have an impact on? Obviously, education has one. Are there other sources of revenue coming in from outside the budget to help them? And they got $451 million of CARES funding to help offset the cuts that we made. You also look at that federal match dollars. You don't want to cut stuff that has high federal match. Like if some of our programs, we put $1 in, you get $3 from the feds. It's the way the match program works. So you're careful not to cut them too much. It's a balancing act in there, and it's never fun when you have to tell somebody you're going to have to cut some of their budget. Nobody wants to do that, but with we knew it was going to be a tight budget going in. People seem to forget that we were talking about budget cuts when the session started, and then when the pandemic hit, and we had additional economic issues that stemmed from that. People aren't working, businesses are closed. It did cause some further cuts. Fortunately, they ended up being about 10% when we were looking at 14% just a couple of months ago.
Able to fund equity, is that the big chunk of that, with that 4%, that difference? As far as the schools, the money being affected, there was no furlough days.
No furlough days
for university system or technical college. How about any projects? Maybe University of West Georgia or Technical College. I mean, Technical College has a big project.
Those are different. The money for the budget is in the general fund is kind of one pot of money. Bond packages are different. Bond packages, because of our AAA rating, we can sell bonds, and that's what funds the capital projects for a lot of these institutions.
The what I would suspect is probably the bill that got the most attention this session would be the hate crimes bill.
Probably
the most immediate attention anyway. The in Ralston, the House Speaker was pushing, from before session even returned, he was pushing, make sure Senate passed something like that. How did you feel about the hate crime bill maybe before this year? How did you feel about it last year? Because wasn't there one approved last year?
There was not one approved. It was submitted. It's the same bill. It was 426, and it took a lot of time and conversation on the House. That's one of those things that Speaker Ralston is obviously in the House. He has a say in what goes on in the House chamber, and he has a very big pulpit in which to preach from, but he doesn't control the Senate. So we are a more deliberate body than the House, and that's not a dig. That's just the way that the two organizations are structured, and we weren't going to just take something and go, okay, if y'all did it, then it must be okay, because it didn't pass the House overwhelmingly. House members had issues with it, so we modified it. Even though he kept saying we won't take up anything that you amend or change. That briefs well, but we're going to do what the Senate does and do it as deliberately as we possibly can and make it as good as we possibly can. One of the major changes in it was there's a data collection piece added to it on the backside that was not in the original bill. We keep talking about these issues that we have, but nobody was taking any hard data on what are the issues, where are the issues. We had 4 police departments across the state that actually did any data collection on what would be considered a hate crime, and one of those is actually the University of Georgia Police. So you're making assumptions and changing laws based off information that you really don't know. So that was in there. What was taken out of 426, and I wasn't happy with this part, was the section on first responders. I thought that was important, that if you're going to target anybody because of, and there's a list of criteria, targeting first responders was just as important to me. So when that was removed, we put it in a different one, and it passed.
HB 838.
That's right.
Is that where that one came back? Was there ever any consideration for hate crimes against political affiliations, or maybe somebody participating in an event associated with political activity?
There was in a version that came up and then went away. And I liked that version. There was it's not politicians, but let's say that you are attending a political rally and somebody targets that rally because they don't like what those people stand for. To me, that's a hate crime too.
And what are the the stricter penalties? What are the bigger penalties? What's an example?
The strictest penalties, so when everybody hears it, it's a sentence enhancer is what it is. Mm-hmm. So, and if you meet, and it's an extremely high bar to prove whether it's a hate crime or not, it can get you a max of 5 years of additional sentence onto your whatever. It's not a standalone sentence, if that makes sense to me. If you get charged for murder, aggravated assault, anything like that, and then they determine in that high bar that it was done because of these reasons, then you're eligible to have a sentence enhancement put on it.
Do you think all the talk about it, hate crime, and then, of course, passing a hate crime bill, and actually it's one of the few that's been signed by the governor thus far, do you think having that deters people from committing those crimes at all?
No. If that was the case, then we wouldn't have any murders in the country, because murder's been on the books for a long time. What this law does is, and I think you may have heard me say this before, is it just signifies that we, the citizens of Georgia, won't tolerate this kind of behavior. That's not who we are. That's not what we stand for. But do I think that that having hate crimes on the books deters hate crimes? Probably not much. Most people aren't thinking if they commit a crime, one, that they're going to get caught, mm-hmm. and two, understand the full ramifications of the sentence that they're looking at. And that would be to say that every state that had a state crime, and as we've heard, there were 46 other ones that did. There's still hate crimes that go on in those states.
Georgia had a hate crime bill maybe in the early 2000s.
2000.
Yeah, what happened to that one?
It was ruled unconstitutional.
Why?
It was too vague.
Okay. So this one improved on it, mm-hmm. I'm guessing. Mike Dugan, our guest on this morning's Community Voice program here on News Talk 1330 FM 106.3. Also streaming live on the News Talk 1330 WLBB Facebook page. I'll take a peek at see if you posted some questions and comments during the break and come back and continue our conversation with the Senate Majority Leader, Mike Dugan, District 3 Senate Senator out of Carrollton. Community Voice brought to you by Tanner Health System, Oak Mountain Academy.
At Oak Mountain Academy, our academic excellence shines through innovation and a personalized educational experience. Our pre-K 3 through 12th grade environment offers a family-oriented atmosphere. We are an independent school with faith-based values and an Academy Honor Code. Our academic standards prepare our students for college and beyond. I'm Patrick Duran, headmaster, inviting you to visit us on the mountain or at oakmountain.us. Come see how our warriors are creating legacies.
For more than 70 years, you have turned to Tanner Health System for your healthcare needs. As our community moves forward, Tanner is here for you. Strong, safe, and close to home. Routine medical appointments, urgent elective surgeries, and imaging are back on the calendar at our hospitals and Tanner Medical Group practices. With the safety of our patients, staff, and community always our top priority. Learn more at tanner.org. # We Are Tanner Strong. That's tanner.org. # We Are Tanner Strong.
.842. Welcome back to the WLBB Community Voice program here on News Talk 1330 FM 106.3. Also on the News Talk 1330 WLBB Facebook page. Appreciate your comments and questions. Take a look at some of those after the break. Again, our guest is District 30 State Senator Mike Dugan. Sheila Taylor says, I would like to know if the hate crime covers whites and cops. We kind of did talk about that second bill that came out. Race is affected in the hate crime. Let's see here. And Derek Newton said that you should come on quarterly, and I think you are on quarterly, maybe even more. We may have you on 5 times a year. But we do appreciate the...
I always appreciate you letting me get on, because I know people have questions, and this is the broadest way to reach them.
We talked a little bit about schools, how the budget affects them. In the previous, there was reducing the number of state-mandated tests in public schools. I think this year was different just because of COVID. Maybe they didn't have to take the end-of-year test, but what's behind that?
A couple different things. One, the educators, the school superintendents asked if we could do it. It does save money for the state and the school systems, and it allows more teaching. I think you heard a couple of years ago that there was a concern through the education community that we were doing more time testing than we were teaching.
And I think focusing on that test and maybe teaching towards that test, right? Was that a concern as well?
Right. So there's still there's still levels that they have to attain, but we're just not doing it with as many tests. And that trend had already started before the economic downturn, but this helped, like everything else, helped accelerate it.
Would give mothers 6 months of Medicaid coverage after delivering a child. I didn't see which bill that was. You and I had talked last year. I think it may have been this year, even early on, concerned about the mortality rate for mothers. Is this a way to
that's
help them?
That's a direct means to address this. What we have seen is that a vast majority are within the first 6 months of those mothers or children that we lose, and this is intended to help drive that number down. That would be in the budget. That's where that comes from. So you wouldn't see it really as a separate bill, but the funding was put in for it.
The funding is in there.
Yes.
Georgia ranks pretty high, though, in the mortality rate for mothers, right? I mean, they're maybe in the top 10.
We are in the top 10, which is not the top 10 that you want to be in.
Absolutely. Pari-mutuel betting, that's been talked about for 4 or 5 years. That didn't come through this year.
No.
Why not?
Well, it was funny because people were pushing that this is a way to raise money. If we have pari-mutuel betting, sports betting, casinos, we could have that money that's going into the budget. And then you say, well, the sports betting, what are you betting on? And there's no sports going on. So you're talking about horse racing. The state that has the most prominent horse racing would be Kentucky, and they supplement horse racing through their general budget. It doesn't go the other way. I don't think that we ought to be in a position where we're supplementing gambling when we ought to be focused more on the schools and healthcare and everything else. And then the casinos, they're shut down too. So now I'm not only not getting revenue from them, I'm paying an additional set of unemployment for a group that is now laid off because their industry shut down. So no, it was not. It was not the year for it. Now, do I believe any of those are going to pass? From what I'm seeing across the state, sports betting stands a pretty good chance of passing in the near future.
Does this bill need to be rewritten for the next session?
Oh yeah, everything that didn't pass that on Friday is dead.
There was a discussion for a tobacco rate increase. It didn't pass.
That's right.
But talked to a couple convenience store owners who actually pointed it out to me. Mm-hmm. Was that a way to generate revenue in this time of COVID, or?
Everything's got multiple purposes. So that was raising revenue and generating revenue is one of those. The other part was healthcare concerns. That if you can disincentivize somebody from buying tobacco, the thought process that they argued during the committee was that that's less money that you're having to provide in health care later on. It did not happen on tobacco, but it did happen on vaping. Vaping is now charged in the same rate as tobacco products, and it wasn't before.
How much was it off before? What was the difference in vaping and tobacco as far as the?
Well, there was no way. Tobacco is done by the weight. That's how it's taxed. Mm-hmm. Vaping, there wasn't a weight, so they had to come up with a criteria on how you do this. And the more we're learning about vaping, the more we're seeing it's not necessarily a safe alternative to tobacco. It's just different. It has a more significant impact on lungs than what they originally thought. So you put it on the same scale as other products like that you use, mainly smoking type tobacco.
Tobacco and alcohol often get lumped together. Mm-hmm. Legislation to allow for delivery mm-hmm. of alcohol. What's behind that? All the
sin tax stuff. That's another one that kind of came out of the pandemic. When restaurants, when they started doing takeaway here, with the executive order was you could take alcohol away. And so the natural extension on that was to allow home delivery.
Does that create jobs in theory?
Not really.
Delivery? No.
Not really. It would, I'm not sure how much that will actually be used because you still got the same criteria that you got to check their IDs when you get there. Just be like going into a store or a restaurant, all those, and you'll still have this same kind of checks on that where somebody will set up a situation where if you're not carding, you lose your license. So I don't think that's one that's going to be heavily used.
Time right now is 8:50. Our guest this morning is Senate Majority Leader Mike Dugan, Republican out of Carrollton, representing District 30. We'll take our final break here, come back with about 8 minutes left in the show. Again, I do encourage you to post any questions or comments to the News Talk 1330 Facebook page, and I'll take a gander at those during our break. Community Voice brought to you by Tanner Health System, Oak Mountain Academy.
For more than 70 years, you have turned to Tanner Health System for your healthcare needs. As our community moves forward, Tanner is here for you. Strong, safe, and close to home. Routine medical appointments, urgent elective surgeries, and imaging are back on the calendar at our hospitals and Tanner Medical Group practices. With the safety of our patients, staff, and community always our top priority. Learn more at tanner.org. #WeAreTannerStrong. That's tanner.org. #WeAreTannerStrong.
A well-rounded education includes much more than just academics. At Oak Mountain Academy, we encourage our students to find their niche in any of our 42 co-curricular opportunities. Over the past 5 years, we have brought home 5 state and 20 regional athletic titles. Our one-act play and literary teams continuously compete at the region and state level, and our academic teams bring home first place more than not. We are warriors creating legacies. To learn more, visit oakmountain.us.
8:51. Welcome back to the WLBB Community Voice program here on News Talk 1330 FM 106.3, streaming live on the News Talk 1330 WLBB Facebook page as well. Our guest this morning, Mike Dugan, State Senate Majority Leader out of Carrollton, represents District 30 in the Senate as well. I got a question here from Diane. She would like Mike to talk about the tax breaks that have been given to the movie industry. Background actors will probably never be used again until the virus is gone. So the 30,000 people who relied on this job for first and second incomes are unemployed and no hope of it returning.
There's always hope of it returning. I'm sorry, I was waiting for the.
Yeah, I guess I was trying to figure out how the two associated. We're talking about the tax breaks and then
the tax breaks weren't modified. There was a push there at the end to do a 10% cut on all tax credits or tax exemptions across the state. And what we kind of like we were talking about with education a little while ago, some of those would have a residual effect on other things. And so we got to the point where we don't want to just ram something through in the last couple of days without having a full analysis on what's the overall impact going to be. So that's going to happen in the off session. Is you'll hear it called the ROI bill, return on investment, where every tax credit in the state is audited to see what the return on investment is, and if we're not getting a return, then they need to go away.
We did talk about how education is the majority of the budget, more than 50% of the budget. House Bill 444 reduced how many college classes high school students can take that are currently paid for by state funds through the dual enrollment program.
Yeah, that was pre-corona. That went through a good while back. And that one was kind of near and dear to my heart because if you remember, that bill that created our dual enrollment program, that was my bill. So, to watch it go from something that was not there, not used, to one that we had concerns about that it was getting used too much. With the level of funding grew exponentially over the last few years on it. What we have found is you don't need to take a PE class as part of your dual enrollment program. That we also found that kids were signing up for the class, and not all, but some, and their GPA in that class was down lower than what they wanted. so they would drop the class. So we were paying for the same class multiple times, and that was skewing the numbers on it. So we had to make some modifications on it.
We talked about tobacco products a little while ago. There was an opportunity to set the age for purchasing vape at 21. How do you feel about that? It didn't pass, but how do you feel about that?
I don't vape, but anything like that.
Well, you mentioned that as far as the putting the tax on it was kind of a way to discourage it because there were concerns. But how about
that's the intent? That's the intent, because at 18, a lot of 18-year-olds are still in high school. So you're doing a legal activity in a school, and 18-year-olds also hang out with 17-year-olds and 16-year-olds. So that was the mindset. Put them all at the same age. Raise it, put them all at the same age to help, if anything, try to delay it a few more years, even if it's going to be inevitable that somebody's going to start using those products.
But that one did not pass.
No.
Okay. We got about 4 minutes left in the show. There, these are the kind of the bills that we heard a lot about throughout the session. What was an important bill to you that maybe didn't get as much attention?
Well, it got a lot of attention on our side, and it'll get a lot of attention going forward from everybody out there, the price transparency bill. So in surprise billing and medical charges. And nobody likes to think they've paid everything and then all of a sudden get another bill for any procedure or checkup or anything that they hadn't anticipated. Those are gone. The pharmacy benefit, we call it the PBM bill, it will have an impact. It'll give you price transparency. It prevents steering from insurance providers that also have interest in pharmacies. It prevents them from steering you to specific pharmacies by withholding payments and coverage. That'll have an impact. You talked about the maternal and infant mortality issues. That's going to be huge. The marketplace facilitator bill that we did very early in the session with online will protect the brick and mortars, the mom and pop shops that we have around here. So all those things are overshadowed by, and it's the same every session. There's one or two bills that come out that kind of take the spotlight. But those that I just mentioned will have a positive impact on Georgians as soon as some of them have already started, and then the rest of them as soon as they're signed into law.
How extensive have conversations got in the Senate or the House that you're aware of about a flat tax for Georgia?
Not even in the conversation right now.
I mean, I think there was a House bill, but nobody's really looking at that.
Yeah. There's thousands of bills that are introduced, and if they don't even make it out of committee, then it shows that there's got a lot of work that got to be done on it.
What, I guess over the next couple of months, what's going to be your role? What are you going to be doing as far as being a senator?
Well, the constituent services never goes away. That's one of the good things, parts about the job I enjoy is helping people here that have issues that come up. And then I'll start putting the last bills I told you about were our Senate priorities going into this session. We'll start putting together the next package. Get ready for it. As soon as this one was done, we started prepping for the next one.
How about the COVID-19 conversation? That'll go on for the next 5 or 6 months?
Yeah, that will have you came really, really close to saying a constitutional amendment to have the legislature meet virtually if another pandemic came back up. It didn't pass. And I don't know about the others, but any bill that's introduced that's very long, it's introduced on day 39, I'm suspect of, just because there's always that little thing that's tucked in there that you don't see. So, and that's what happened with that one, and we decided not to move forward with it. Any
chance for a special session? I mean, to react to anything for COVID-19 this year?
Potential. If we have a massive downturn where COVID spikes to the earlier levels, then we may have to adjust. If the numbers keep improving, the economic numbers keep improving like what we've seen over the last month and a half, then we would not have a special session. We would do an amended when we go back in January. So, but there's always, you'd asked me 2 years ago about special sessions. I said there's never a special session. Now I've been in 3 of them in the last 3 years, so it's a little bit different now.
I want to thank Michael Dugan for joining us on this morning's Community Voice program, State Senate Majority Leader, and representing the 30th Senate District, Carroll, Douglas, and portion of Paulding County, or all of Paulding?
No, just a portion of all three.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming out this morning.
Appreciate y'all having me.
Appreciate you guys tuning in this morning to the Community Voice program here on News Talk 1330 FM 106.3, brought to you by Tanner Health System and Oak Mountain Academy. Have a great Monday.